do, do, beep.
Just waiting for the go ahead for the live.
Yeah, the live right now, it's like I had it set up and then it told me I didn't have permission. So I'm trying to see what's going on with that.
It says we are live.
Okay. Should be good.
All right. Welcome, everybody, for our weekly restoration, Fixing the World speaker series. I'm Lonix Landry today, and I'll be your host, and I'm the Native Coordinator in the Indian Natural Resource Science and Engineering Program and Diversity in STEM. Before we get to our guest, I would like to share with you that our Cal Poly Humboldt, California Big Time will be back in person. So if you're in this region, it is a great time to come here April 8th and come check out some of our California-centric cultural sharing. So today's program is brought to you by Native American Studies of Cal Poly Humboldt, Save California Salmon, the Yurok Tribe, and also Intercept, the program that I work for, the Indian Natural Resource Science and Engineering Program and Diversity in STEM. And I would like to thank our guests from RES and RES in general for always acquiescing with our request to, hey, tell us what's going on. What's happening with the dam removal? What's happening with the restoration projects that are coming? You all have been awesome at keeping us informed on what's going on for the last few years. Appreciate it. And it's an honor to have you on here today. And Gwen, if you would like to introduce yourself, and let's kick it off with Rez.
Thanks, Lonix. Thanks so much for having us here. My name is Gwen Santos, and I am the Director of Ecology and Regulatory for the Western region. I'm also a senior wetland ecologist and the lead ecologist for RES on the Klamath project. I've been working on the project since 2019 when I came to RES, and it has just been an honor and a privilege, and yeah, grateful to be here and talk to y'all about the project.
And Dan.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Dan Chase. I am the Director of Fisheries, Aquatics, and Design for the Western region. I am a senior fisheries biologist as well for RES. Have had the opportunity to work on the Klamath project with my colleague Gwen since 2019, and it's just been a hugely humbling and amazing project to be part of. Learned so much from not only the amazing people in the basin, but from the resources and getting a chance to spend time in the basin and learning the fisheries and the ways of the area has just been an amazing opportunity for us. So always pleased and feel very fortunate to have the chance to talk with your group, Lonix, and really appreciate the opportunity to spend time here with everyone during their day. And hopefully we can give a little bit of an overview of the restoration piece and some of the fisheries and the monitoring work that's going to take place. Obviously, this is a big, huge project. We have a limited time, and we'll try to get through as much as we can, but we'll try to answer questions, or we'll have our contact info for after if anybody wants to reach out to us. So with that, say thank you.
Great. Well, we
Regina,
do
would you
not
like us
have the
to
video
roll forward?
prepared, so whoever wants to start first is welcome to it.
All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen and kick off the presentation. All right. Dan, good to go? All right. So a little bit later, we'll be showing a film that we worked on with a documentary filmmaker, Shane Anderson, called Restoring Balance. But before we launch into the video release, Dan and I will talk to you about some of the elements of restoration that we've been working on the last few years. So a little bit about the presentation today. The slideshow will give an introduction, some of the background and project purpose, talk about schedule, project goals, restoration goals, and then we'll describe elements of restoration and then leave a little bit of time to discuss monitoring performance of the project. So RES is an operations company with national presence. Size and scale of our company and the projects we take on allow us to approach projects from cradle to cradle. For Klamath, we are the restoration designer and contractor. We have supported and continue to support the regulatory approvals process. We are implementing biological conservation measures, and we also we manage the long-term monitoring and maintenance of the restoration to meet performance criteria. We also guarantee our work. So that means that for all the restoration actions that our company undertakes, we will remain responsible and on-site until those performance criteria are met and we achieve regulatory approvals for that. Again, just to reiterate, this is a progressive design build project. We've been at the table with regulators, partners, contractors, the dam removal contractor, the owner, since we came onto the project in 2019. And RES will be responsible until success criteria are achieved and approved by regulatory agencies. Now, this next slide is a favorite of many of ours at RES. It just really illustrates the long history of the project, the many tribal nations, natural resource agencies, landowners, scientists, and countless others who have worked on this project for decades. And it really illustrates that we as RES are standing on the shoulders of giants. As many of you are aware, tribal nations, including the Yurok, Karuk, Hupa Valley, Shasta, and Klamath, and have dedicated countless hours bringing this project to fruition. Cultural ceremonies, practices, and resources remain impacted by the presence of the dams. The overarching purpose of the project is to achieve removal of the dams, a free-flowing river, with fish able to pass the river on their own. The purpose of the project is achieved through deconstruction of the 4 hydroelectric dam facilities on the Klamath River. The oldest dam, Kopko 1, was constructed in 1918, while the newest dam, Iron Gate, was constructed in 1962. These dams are not operated for flood control, nor do they provide water for agriculture or drinking water. With the issuance of license surrender in November 2022, project activities in support of pre-construction kicked off in March of this year, just a couple weeks ago. The restoration construction period consists of drawdown, dam removal, and restoration construction beginning in January of 2024. This is anticipated to be a 2-year period, followed by a minimum 5-year period for maintenance and monitoring actions. Restoration goals include achieving a free-flowing river for volitional fish passage, stabilizing sediments through supplemental evacuation and revegetation, and habitat enhancement through the addition of large wood structures and habitat complexity within and along tributary channels. The next few slides, I'll cover some of the restoration elements that we've been undertaking. These include key elements, including seed collection and propagation, IUV treatment, reservoir area and tributary restoration, and large wood placement. The next few slides will focus on items 1 and 2, seed collection and propagation, and IUV treatment. Revegetation is incredibly important for restoration. Not only does it contribute to sediment stabilization, but native vegetation is also important for pollinator species, ecological food sources. Native vegetation provides competition for invasive species, and there are many native plants that are culturally important. To achieve the diversity and abundance of species, we have been collecting native seed directly from the watershed since 2018. RES came onto the project in 2019, at which time we contracted with the Yurok tribe to implement collection. Since then, we've collaborated closely to meet annual collection goals and create a diverse seed bank of over 96 native species for propagation, bare root production, herbaceous plugs, and direct broadcasting into the landscape. Our collection target is 17 to 19 billion seeds. And this will enable the former reservoir footprints to be seeded twice at a rate of 80 to 100 seeds per square foot. The application rate is based on studies from the Elwha River restoration and is designed to establish a native seed bank and outcompete invasive exotic species already abundant in the landscape. This next slide shows a few of the native plants that we've selected in our palette and have been wild collected over the last few years. We have California poppy, mountain penstemon, lupin, ceanothus, turkey mullein, lomatiums, yarrow, and this one is a particular favorite, the smooth blazing star. Josh Chenoweth, senior riparian ecologist for the Yurok tribe, has been leading the revegetation program field effort. Drawing from his experience on the Elwha River restoration, he has developed a revegetation approach using what he calls facilitation patches. Essentially, the idea is when plants are restored as communities, rather than planted individually, they share resources, and they can also establish at an accelerated rate. And because of these factors, they can create more resilient landscapes against things like drought and competition from invasive species. Beyond these facilitation patches, seed will be broadcast into the landscape to establish ground cover and generate a native seed bank. The facilitation patches will consist of broadcast seed, bare root plants, containerized plants, and herbaceous plugs, including tens of thousands of oaks and all kinds of native shrubs. And most of this work will be done by hand, people walking through the landscape. IEV, or invasive exotic vegetation, is abundant in the landscape. This consists of species such as yellow star thistle, Himalayan blackberry, cheatgrass, medusa head, just to name a few. And because post drawdown, there will be thousands of acres of newly exposed footprints, we are working to control IEV populations in order to support native plant reestablishment. We will minimize IEV abundance at all restoration sites and have been working diligently over the past 2 years to reduce the IEV seed bank. Field crews have been grubbing and mowing high priority areas of IEV in preparation for drawdown and revegetation. In addition to these methods, we'll use solarization, tilling, disking, and minimally apply herbicides in an effort to control species where grubbing and mowing has not shown success. In the next few slides, I'll move on to items 3 and 4. reservoir area and tributary restoration, and large wood placement. This slide shows the current configuration of the Copco Reservoir. And this animation shows the anticipated condition following restoration. Following drawdown, we anticipate the main stem of the Klamath River to reoccupy its historic alignment. We will focus our restoration efforts on reconnection to high priority tributaries, such as Beaver Creek up here at the top, and revegetation throughout the former reservoir footprints, sediment stabilization and monitoring to adaptively manage and meet performance criteria. This restoration blueprint will be applied to all 3 reservoir footprints. Finally, to add complexity to the newly formed channels, we will add large wood. I'll kick it over to Dan to continue the presentation and talk about monitoring performance.
Great, thank you, Gwen. Yeah, so if you can go to the next slide, please. So we have a total of 16 management plans that were filed with FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, back in November of 2022 as part of the license surrender. That's a really important piece of this because what it's doing is it's prescribing the performance criteria, the monitoring elements, the maintenance actions, including the adaptive management that RES will undertake along with the other project partners. So RES is responsible for 4 of these management plans. They're shown on the screen. Those include the Reservoir Area Management Plan, the Terrestrial and Wildlife Management Plan, the Water Quality Management Plan, and then the Aquatic Resource Management Plan. That has a number of sub-plans in it. I'll talk a little bit about some of the pieces of this as we go forward. But really, this is open and available to the public, so anyone can access those and see how we prescribe to do the work that we're going to do over the next several years. Next slide. Looking at revegetation monitoring, so my colleague covered the importance of revegetation and really how much of a monumental effort that's going to be. We're going to use monitoring to help inform how not only the success of that revegetation is occurring, but also where we need to do maintenance actions to help different planting locations. And so permanent reference plots were established back in 2021 and 2022, and those will be areas that we use as a baseline to compare to the revegetated portions of the former reservoir footprints. With that, Gwen, if you can go to the next slide. For pre-construction work, which is currently going right now, and we should point out that the dam removal activities are actually being conducted by Kiewit Infrastructure West. They're our partners underneath Klamath River Renewal Corporation. They're handling the dam removal itself. RES is handling the restoration component. And so with their construction activities, RES will be involved with monitoring and clearing areas to make sure that impacts to native vegetation and local wildlife are minimized during those activities. So that work is currently underway. Go to the next slide. So one of the primary objectives of this project, as Gwen mentioned, is really to restore volitional fish passage. We have a number of miles of river and tributary habitat. We have about 22 miles that we anticipate will reemerge and start to breathe and become available again within the former reservoirs. But there is up to almost 400, about 420 miles of anadromous habitat anticipated to be restored above and through the project area. And so really making sure that fish can pass through our project site is very critical. To do that, we're going to be monitoring fish passage over the next several years. We have about 49 miles of river and tributary habitat that we'll be monitoring this next year to make sure that things like residual reservoir sediments and anthropogenic debris, so pieces of the dam, things that were used to construct the dam back almost 100 years ago in some locations, that those have been removed and that they're not causing passage issues for fish to get through those areas. You go to the next slide, we'll just have a quick figure that shows spatially where that is taking place. And you can see the downstream end, it extends all the way down to Cottonwood Creek on the left-hand side. which is close to I-5 in California, and we extend all the way up through into Oregon through J.C. Boyle. Depending on the type of project permit and management plan, we're monitoring different locations over different time, but you can see the spatial extent here is quite large. You can go to the next slide, please. Prior to so now I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the actions that are being done to help minimize impacts of the project as well on the aquatic resources. Prior to the drawdown of the reservoirs that will happen next year, we are going to be relocating a number of protected Schwalm and Koptu from the different project area reservoirs. We have a target number we're trying to move, so that way before the drawdowns begin, they will be relocated out and can be used for different management components going forward. So we have, this work is slated to begin this April. So it'll be a large effort that we're working with the Klamath tribes, the Karuk tribe, River Design Group, along with our state and federal partners to implement. Next slide, please. In addition, some fisheries work that we're doing downstream of Iron Gate. So this is in the area that's currently accessible to salmon and steelhead. We will be targeting a number of locations really between Iron Gate and close to Happy Camp. We're extending down over many river miles that we're going to be looking to move a life stage of coho salmon called the overwintering juvenile life stage, which is a uncommon but important component of the species. We're going to be moving them from the main stem into tributary habitat or off-channel habitat the month before the drawdown begins. The intention of that is to move them out of the way of the sediment that's going to be released at the beginning of the drawdown and give them a chance to kind of maliciously reoccupy areas without having that impact occur. Go to the next slide, please. If you can jump ahead, there's an image here. So this map is showing during the drawdown, which is going to be next year, roughly between March and July, we will be monitoring 13 key tributaries between Iron Gate and Syad Valley. What we're doing is we're monitoring temperatures in those tributaries, and then in the main stem river, we'll be monitoring the turbidity or the suspended sediment concentrations that are coming down. We're working with the Karuk tribe with this to do this work, and in the event that conditions become harmful and do not allow juvenile salmonids to be able to move through those tributaries and out the main stem, we will coordinate with our state, federal, and tribal partners to implement a trapping and relocation effort to move those fish out of harm's way. So this is all part of the large-scale efforts that are being done to try to minimize the impact of the drawdown on protected resources below the Iron Gate as well. Go to the next slide, please. So once the dams are out, there's going to be a target amount of spawning habitat that we're looking for above the dams to make sure that we're offsetting any of the impact that occurred when the drawdown happened. So we have a target amount of spawning material in both the main stem Klamath River and then the newly accessible tributary habitat that we'll be surveying for. In the event that we do not find that target amount, we will be incorporating additional spawning enhancement elements to the restoration work that RES is undertaking. Slide. In addition to monitoring that there's spawning habitat available, we're also going to be monitoring for fish presence. Really, this monitoring piece is to help better inform whether or not areas are accessible to fish, and not so much for us to inform population level changes. Things like that are being handled more by our state and federal partners like California Department of Fish and Wildlife and Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. What we're really doing is we're looking to evaluate, are we getting salmon and steelhead and back into these different areas that we expected to be open to them. So we will be doing different surveys following the dam removal to evaluate that, and we will be coordinating with those agencies to learn from where they're monitoring and where they're seeing returning fish. Next slide, please. So aerial monitoring is going to be a big piece of what we do to inform our restoration design and these different monitoring elements that we've been looking at. We're going to be using a combination of drones, fixed wing aircraft, and overflight to collect LiDAR and photogrammetry. What that's going to do is it's going to help us tell a story of what the reservoir, former reservoir sediments look like once the water's been drawn down. We have an idea of what they're going to be, but we know that until the reservoirs are drawn down, we won't actually know the hard surface, the physical surface that we will be doing our restoration work on. So we're partnering with the Yurok tribe to do a lot of this data collection, so that way we can move from what is currently a 60% restoration design drawing to a design drawing that we can implement in the field within a few months once the reservoirs have been drawn down. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. In addition to a lot of the on the ground and over aerial data collection we're going to be doing, we're also going to be setting up a network of photo monitoring points. This helps us better understand things like landscape scale change that we expect to see. And it can also do things like capture time-lapse sequences of things like how the dams are coming down, but also how the areas, the reservoir sediments are being revegetated. We're very excited about this because we know that this helps really communicate the success of the project and with the change over time. You can go to the next slide, please. So all of this provides a little bit of a roadmap of roughly what we're doing and also how we're planning to monitor this activity as we really move from what is currently a lentic system to a lotic system. We're moving from a situation of a reservoir here. This is J.C. Boyle Dam. If you can go to the next slide. Given the environment and the watershed here, accelerated path to recovery back into a free-flowing river condition. With that, we'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all today. We have a couple project contacts that are on there. And we'd also like to share on the next slide a number of useful links. We've talked about some of the management plans. Some people may be interested in digging into those a little bit more. There's a link there on the website and a number of other useful links to learn more about the project.
All right, so Dan and Gwen, well, if you think this is a great time, I will attempt to share the video. I've downloaded it, and let's see how we can do with our technological abilities and making things work. I'm gonna share screen. Try that one more time, share screen, there we go. And I want screen 3 and share. And away we go. Keep your fingers crossed. Is it working,
Klamath
Dan?
River is what brings us life.
Can you hear it? Okay.
We're at Ishipishi Falls, down here dip netting, traditional Karuk way of fishing at our sacred ceremonial fishing spot. And very fortunate there's salmon here this year. This year, I'm actually living where some years you don't feel like it so much when the fish ain't here and you're fish people. Salmon signifies our ceremonies. It signifies what time of year it is. Could people believe that? If the salmon are no longer in the river, humans are no longer on the land. And they put the dams in, it blocked off hundreds of miles of the pristine habitat that our salmon needed. To have these dams removed, it's going to restore the culture of our people.
Really, dam removal is just the first step to restoration. There's no point in doing restoration anywhere else if you don't get the dam out of the river. The goal of the project is to remove 4 old hydroelectric dams and open up about 450 miles of fish habitat upstream of the lowermost dam. This is the largest river restoration dam removal project that's ever been undertaken. We're looking at about 2,200 acres of restoration between the 4 reservoirs. You can imagine the complexities that come along with an undertaking like this. With the Renewal Corporation and their dam removal contractor removing the dams, and then the company I work for, Res, following up with the restoration of the reservoir footprints and some key priority tributaries. There have been people that have devoted their lives to dam removal on the Klamath River, and I'm eternally grateful to them. And I want all those folks to know that this is real. This is happening, and it's being done by people that really, truly care. Here, we're coming down to the J.C. Boyle powerhouse. Water runs from the dam down the power canal, goes about 2 miles downriver, runs through a tunnel in the mountain to the 2 generators that are down here at the powerhouse. That same amount of water keeps moving. Coming down from there, Copco number 1 dam, Copco number 2 dam, and Iron Gate dam. What's feeding the upper basin and feeding the headwaters of the Klamath River is some of the most beautiful, pristine water. There are some pretty incredible, hopeful pockets of cold water and springs that are producing that water between J.C. Boyle Dam and Copco Lake. Right now, that very cold water heats up and you lose all the benefits of it. Algae blooms, dissolved oxygen goes down, and then it's killing fish. We've seen fish kills for the past 20 years. It's a bad time to be a fish in the Klamath River. We remove those thermal sinks. What we end up with is getting the cold water from the river flowing through the system. It's not getting stopped to get heated up. Dam removal is just the first step to restoration. The dams come out, the rivers are flowing back in their main channel again. And before dam removal is even complete, we're already getting vegetation established on the reservoir sediments.
We are going to revegetate the area using native seeds that are collected. They're not commercially available. Started partnering with the Yurok tribe to do the seed collection.
Yeah, the Yurok tribe, they've got a very large and robust fisheries construction division that's going to be a great resource when it's time to start building the physical restoration of the project. The Karuk tribe has an amazing fisheries department, and they're helping us identify opportunities for protection of fisheries resources during dam removal. The Klamath tribes in the upper basin have a world-class water quality laboratory, and we've entered into a partnership with them to monitor the evolution of poor water quality to improved water quality over the course of the project. We're working with tribal members who have a absolutely vested interest in putting the river back, getting the river healthy. I'm personally really excited to see salmon and steelhead getting back into Spencer Creek, kind of the uppermost main fish-bearing tributary on the main stem Klamath River, upstream of the J.C. Boyle Dam.
Once the dams come down, we expect that Spencer Creek is going to be one of the streams that we see salmon quickly reoccupy because the habitat is such a high quality already. So we're down here, we're sampling environmental DNA. You'll hold this out and you'll run the tube off of it. You don't need to stick the rod in, but basically environmental DNA is a really powerful tool that helps tell a more complete picture of the not only individual species that are coming back to an area, but the full assemblage, the full group of fish that are using that area. So we can use this now to say what was here when the dams were in place, and then we'll continue to sample when the dams come out to show the reintroduction of these fish.
Primary objectives here are reshaping the channel, getting vegetation reestablished on the reservoir sediments that become exposed, immediately bringing back high quality habitat for the anadromous fish. We're going to be able to come out here and see salmon in a place where they haven't been in over 100 years.
After the dams come out, we're going to be left with about 2,200 acres of former reservoir footprint. So what we've got to do is revegetate those whole areas. If we were to do nothing, it would end up dry and barren and full of invasives. So we're trying to go out and treat those areas right now that have high densities of them in our project area so that we can foster native growth during the restoration period. Res came out of the project in 2019. In 2019, I also started partnering with the Yurok tribe to do the seed collection. I'm with the seed crew for the Yurok tribe, and today we are gathering Persia tridentata. I feel like our seeds are part of a legacy that I can leave behind. Our grandchildren will be able to see what we've planted here and what we're picking. Lomatium,
Yes.
which one is
This
it?
one's new to colony.
Nudicology.
So what would be good is if I'm leaving a little seed, off of each one, because I don't like stealing it all.
Okay.
So leave a little bit of seed, but take most, because that's a valuable plant for us. There's a major interaction between cultural knowledge of plants and the science of it. Having those two values really just makes it an important target for a restoration project. Native vegetation is the foundation of any good restoration project. So far, we've collected 98 different species.
And with that comes propagating over 11 billion seeds. Our goal is to get to 17 billion.
We're a native seed farming operation. We grow native grasses and wildflowers for restoration projects all around the entire West. We focus on getting materials that are actually going to fit the sites they come from, have the local adaptations in place so they can be returned to the environment so work in best. We're standing right here in a field of blue bunch wheatgrass. This is a ecotype for the Klamath River Renewal Project. And we're working with them to take a handful of seed and get it up to the hundreds or thousands of pounds they'll need so that they have the local genetics that are adapted to that area. There's many blue bunch wheatgrasses, but every one of them is different. So this is the adaptation for the Klamath Basin, and it's what they need for the restoration to be successful. We've done about 19 species here on their grow out and seed increase project. And so now after the years that we've been working, we probably have several billion seeds.
The Creek Fisheries Program has been studying salmon in the Mid-Klamath for over 20 years. So we're coming to Horse Creek today to look at some habitat projects that the Karuk tribe constructed over the last 10 years, off-channel ponds and large wood structures. Part of the dam removal is drawing down reservoirs that have sediment trapped in the reservoirs, and that sediment is going to mobilize through the Klamath River. So as a precautionary measure, we're going to relocate some portion of that population into these off-channel ponds. We have a really strong monitoring component built into everything we do.
This pig tag project gives us real live data as fish are moving through the system, from its juvenile stage to its out migrating stage to its return stage.
Within 2 or 3 years, we're seeing not a handful of coho, but hundreds of coho spawning in here.
With the restoration in the former dam footprints, we're going to be adding features like large wood into it to really bring up the habitat value quickly.
Adding structure, not only provides immediate benefits and cover and spawning gravel for salmon, it also adds the building blocks for the riparian forest to come back. It's a good starting point in restoration.
We're here today to look at our restoration site, with Resource Environmental Solutions Res, so that we can have a conversation about the importance of restoration to us as tribal people. It's a good example of our capacity, and it also mirrors in a lot of ways the dam removal project itself. We can show the example of what it looks like, how we implement, how we talk, how we look at the world around us, and hopefully continue to build that relationship with res.
We've been working with the Yurok tribe for 3 years. We get down here as often as we can to see what they're doing, see the work that's been going on.
Like, I tell youngsters all the time about what I do, and they're just like, they don't believe this job like exists. They're like, what? Like, you do that? Then I'll show them like pictures of like before and after pictures of like some of our projects, and they're just like blown away. It's the coolest job I've ever had.
When we showed up, this was a big old meadow. So our goal was to open this meadow back up, turn it back into fish habitat.
We believe that humans are part of this world, that we're part of this landscape, that we belong here. We're not just restoring this earth or this ground, we're restoring our people as well, our tribal members. We've been doing this since the beginning of time. It's what we were placed here to do. This is the conversation for this project. This is the conversation for dam removal.
Res is one of a very select few companies who are able to take on the level of ecological risk associated with a project like this. And then we guarantee its success. And in this case, we guarantee its success until criteria are met that have been developed in concert with the state and federal resource agencies and some of the local tribes.
We've always been fighting to restore the balance of this ecosystem. And the 50,000 foot view of what's happening here, this is a project that heals our entire ecosystem.
We're all working incredibly hard. Everyone on this project, I've never been on a project that so many people have come forward to give so much to make sure it happens.
Collaboration is the key. Without collaboration, you're just by yourself.
It's very meaningful because of all of the partners on the project that I get to work with. The opportunity to help restore the landscape and the habitat for what once was the third largest salmon fishery on the West Coast.
When the dams come down, they're gonna let us live again. We're gonna be living again.
All right, that was awesome. So, a couple notes from Save California Salmon and our res folks is that video will be released tomorrow. So if there was some clarity issues or something like that, fear not, you'll be able to access that and get the purest version of it. Gwen and Dan, any more comments from you before we get into some questions?
I would just say we're super excited to kick off the project this year and be a part of this historic event.
Gotcha. So I kind of have a question, and I think it dovetails into this question that Charlie has asked, and it's I really appreciate the collaborative effort. It was great to see local companies being part of this effort. It was great to see the Kuduk and Yurok tribe and others being part of this effort. I was awesome, and Frankie Joe's words there at the end to wrap up that video were excellent. So for my role working here at Cal Poly Humboldt in the Indian Natural Resource Science and Engineering program in diversity and STEM, do you two have ideas or visions on how some of our developing professionals may engage with this, and that this will kind of dovetail into the next question as well?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. And it's a great question, and it's something that's important to us because we really think about this project as continuity of other dam removal projects, and we learn so much from the work that takes place in each one of them, and that really carries forward to help improve the way that future dam removal or future large-scale river restoration projects can happen. So it is kind of that continuity of knowledge and having more people involved to learn from it so that they can carry it out to the work that they do is important. We've looked to try to contract and work with a broad base of people in the basin. That includes not only our tribal partners with this, which are part of our long-term success that we recognize and we know, but also local or regional groups. And so we do anticipate at different points there'll be opportunities for groups to be involved in maybe some sort of either voluntary aspect or under contract with us. Thinking about the broader research community, we've been working to be engaged to communicate out what the project is doing, and things like how do researchers get access to study the dam removal. You know, we have our core requirements that we have to meet for the performance of the project, that's called out by the management plans. That's our requirements to not only the states of California and Oregon, but also to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission of what we need to do and meet. But that doesn't answer every question by any means, and we know there's a lot of research that that is going to take place in and around this. So we're working to try to facilitate things like access, information sharing, sharing our resources that we have available. And so we think that that opens up a lot of doors to a much broader group. So a group like Cal Poly, who has a number of experts that are studying this, you know, the Klamath and the dam removal, we're working to help facilitate and share some of the information that we have. So I hope that helps answer some of that question, but you know, this is a long-term project, and we know at different phases there'll be more opportunities to be able to have other people involved, or different groups or student groups and things like that. This year and next year is a very intensive period with construction, and so for safety reasons, they're really trying, KRC, Klamath River Renewal Corporation, is really being cautious about who can be in what locations at what times, because there's going to be a lot of yellow iron moving around and a lot of change conditions in the river. So,
gotcha. Gwen, did you have anything to add to that?
I think Dan did a pretty great job at covering it. But yeah, there's so many questions out there that you know, would be super beneficial to be asked through research, that, you know, we're really trying to partner with the research community to fill those gaps.
Yeah, I think we definitely have a lot of passionate, caring people. Regina, before I get to Charlie's question, did you want to jump in?
You can ask Charlie's question first. I just had a question too.
All right, well, let's get to Charlie's. So in response to the coho relocation, is it safe to assume that there will be collaboration efforts with Cutter Tribal Fisheries, as well as Mid-Klamath Watershed Council, aka MCWIC? I know they've had incredible success with off-channel rearing sites for coho juveniles.
yeah, it's a great comment and a great point. You know, I think, and that was kind of shown in the film there, looking at Horse Creek and a lot of the fantastic work that's happened there to really increase the capacity of that stream to support coho salmon. We've been working very closely with the Karuk Tribe Fisheries Department over the last several years to shape how we're going to do these different efforts, like relocating overwintering coho salmon, the juvenile stage, from the main stem river before the drawdown begins. That's one of the pieces that I talked about in the presentation, or in our PowerPoint presentation. For that situation like that, where we've been relying on their knowledge, their experience, and a lot of the work that they've done with MCWIC to create those habitats. And we're going to use those habitat locations for where we can take fish to. And we'll be doing that work hand in hand with the Creek Fisheries Department. And so it's really an intertwined effort. I will say there's lots of layers. Every part of this project has many, many layers to it. So while there's the work that's being done, there's the agency oversight that's involved with making sure that the activities are done in a way that's held to a high standard and meets their management needs. So we're working very closely with California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the State Water Resources Control Board, and National Marine Fisheries on that activity itself. And so if you think about that as a microcosm of the project, every activity we have partners that are going to be involved with actually doing the work, but there were years of planning and back and forth on the design and the approach and how it would be done to get it to a point that it was approved in a regulatory context. We will do the activities, and then afterwards we'll be reporting out, and we'll have oversight from state, federal, and tribal groups of those activities. And so I think that these is very collaborative. If a group is maybe not directly involved with the activity, often the work that they did led the groundwork for us to be able to successfully implement an action. So a lot of the Mid-Klamath work has really built up some resilience and the chance for those fish to, we hope, move into the newly restored habitat quickly and really experience greater range increase again.
Gwen, was that Dan was pretty efficient there, but was there any other points?
No, I'm the plant person.
Got it.
So I'll defer to Dan on the fisheries questions.
Excellent. Yeah. Along those lines, before we get to Regina's question, when those species left these systems for above the dams, it has changed culture. And so I'm excited to see what that looks like. And I know we have a lot of wonderful researchers in the NAS department and in our College of Natural Resources and Sciences to look at all the facets of what that return looks like and what that means culturally to the people who haven't had these species accessible for a long time. It only took like one generation for these things to start to morph and change, culturally speaking. I'm excited to see how quickly that renaissance happens, culturally speaking, as well. Regina.
Hey, I wanted to ask, and this seems like a Dan question because it's fish too. If you could go into a little bit about what the habitat you're expecting to see within the reservoir reaches looks like, and what kind of work you'll be doing to make sure that habitat is connected and able to be utilized, as soon as possible.
Yeah, great question. So there's about 2,200 acres of reservoir that's going to be drained and switched from this bathtub to a combination of upland, riparian, wetland, and stream and tributary habitat. So it's going to be obviously a big change through there. It should be about 22 miles of main stem river and tributary habitat that really reemerges and starts to breathe again that's currently sitting underneath that reservoir, those 4 reservoirs right now. And we'll note I've kind of interchanged between, there's 4 dams coming out, but there's really only 3 that have big reservoirs behind them. One of them, Copco 2, which is coming out this year, has a very small impoundment area behind it. So we've kind of talked about, you maybe heard dam numbers and then the reservoir area interchanged a little bit there. As far as the habitat that we expect to be there, the main stem Klamath River, we do expect to reoccupy its historic alignment. This is a higher gradient portion of the Klamath. It's more of a canyon-y confined area. It's part of the reason it was a good place to put dams when they targeted the area, was because of those deeper canyons. And so we do expect that they will reoccupy the same channel alignment it had before the dams went in. That's also part of the reason we're really targeting the restoration activities, things like grading to make sure that channel floodplains are connected, putting roughness features and large wood in different areas to make sure that the habitat becomes more dynamic and more able to support fish and in a quicker pace. We're really focusing that on the tributary areas that are going to reemerge. So along all the banks, all the upland areas, we'll be doing revegetation. We'll be doing riparian enhancement to make sure that that riparian vegetation gets in there quickly and gets a kickstart. And then some of the things that we're very interested in seeing that we anticipate, but we won't actually know all the locations until the reservoirs are drawn down, are things like cold water springs, which are so critical to salmon. We know of cold water springs below J.C. Boyle Dam. That's a very important source we anticipate to helping things like spring run Chinook salmon get into the upper basin. But we do anticipate seeing other cold water springs that are going to emerge that are currently under the reservoirs. So we'll be working with our partners to make sure that those areas have enhancements so that we're not just having that cold water move out of the system quickly, but having things like alcoves and pool and holding areas being enhanced. So there's a lot to it. Certainly making sure the former dam footprints are passable to fish. So we'll be doing a lot of fish passage monitoring. But we're all really excited because I think what we'll see is we have ideas with a large group here about the restoration actions, but really those fish are going to they're going to find new ways to make their living and find different habitat types that we're really excited to see and to track.
Excellent. Great response, Dan. You are very thorough in your responses, but along the lines of habitat and what it might look like when these things are gone and the way water spreads and things and what it can do to those plant systems. And excuse me, Gwen, did you have anything to add on that? What's this habitat going to look like?
Yeah, so we'll have different communities of representing all the different layers in the ecological landscape. You've got your herbaceous kind of ground cover annual plants, get some perennial herbaceous species established as well, and then you've got your trees and shrubs. So all of these plants have been selected because they were already present in the landscape. They already grow there, they have the genetics. And then we've just taken those and put them in the amplification programs to get enough volume to restore it. But yeah, we'll be looking at putting back the functional habitat. Wetlands, those will be enhanced somewhat, but we think there's already a seed bank that's underneath the reservoir footprint. And then, doing your riparian plantings. And then, as Dan mentioned, that we'll be revegetating all of the newly created uplands. And this is an effort to make a resilient landscape, create off-channel and floodplain habitat for juvenile fish and all the other wildlife in the area that depend on these habitats.
Well, that's wonderful. I have a few closing remarks, but Gwen and Dan, I'd like to offer you any closing remarks that you'd like to have. Go for it.
Again, we're just super excited to be a part of this historic project. Yeah, I mean, I've already got crews out there that are doing the biological monitoring. And it's exciting, it's amazing, and it's just an incredible privilege to be a part of it.
I think
Dan?
she said it all, Dan. Or did you have any last comment yourself?
I will just say real quickly that we do really appreciate this opportunity, and we've learned so much. And there's just the communities in the basin, the tribes in the basin have really made this a successful project. We're on the shoulders of what they have done, and we're going to work hand in hand going forward because this is a long-term recovery, and we just are really humbled and appreciate the opportunity to be part of it.
Well, much appreciation as always for your time and efforts and all you're doing towards this project. Yes, indeed, we stand on the shoulders of giants. And fortunately, we are now getting to learn about the indigenous giant shoulders that we also are standing on, but have left out of this story. And obviously, we're coming back strong and fixing the world. So next week, we'll be joined by the Yurok tribe to talk about coastal restoration. We have also several action alerts to support our salmon and dam removal, along with a land back conference and dinner coming up on Friday. Check out the californiasalmon.org for more info on the series, conference, and upcoming action alerts. All right, you all have a great time. It's been a pleasure to be here with you, and I hope to see you next week.
Thank you.
Cousin Niece Michaela, take it over.